Hey, everybody. Welcome back
y'all.
to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Ty.
And we are here to help you take dominion in every single area of your life. That's why we do this every single week, because we are dedicated to help you get to that place that you have in your heart to get to with your life. And I am excited, man.
Super excited
about today's episode.
Oh
We usually bring heat, but we bring in some extra heat today. We got a little cayenne pepper type heat on this episode, man. We are excited about our special guest because she's here to help all of us evolve, become better versions of ourselves, go to the next level to be all that God has called us to be. So we have none other than Pastor, New York Times bestselling author, influencer, all around cool person, wife, mom, Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is like one of maybe two interviews that I've done where they say New York Times bestselling author. It feels a little surreal to hear that when
it's real.
It being introduced. That's something.
It's real. Congrats to you.
That will always be on the resume. Will never come off. So
isn't that crazy? That's so
deal.
Crazy. Thank you.
Super excited to be talking to you about your new book. We've had your husband on a few times. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to him, but we're super excited to dive deep into your new book, Woman Evolve.
So before we jump into that, it might be, I don't know about 3 people that don't know who you are.
I doubt that.
We just want to be sure that everybody knows who we're rocking with today. So those that are listening for the first time and being introduced to Pastor Sarah Jakes Robert, can you just say hello and let them know what you're all about?
Absolutely. Hello. Nice to meet you. I am Sarah Jakes Roberts. I am a wife, a mother, a sister, a friend, and I think that pretty much encompasses everything that I do. Even what I do with Woman Evolve is very much so done from that role of sister and friend. I am the founder of Woman Evolve, which is a movement meant to help empower women to really evolve in every area of their lives, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, you name it. We have tools and resources to help those women. My parents have been doing this for so many years, helping women evolve in different areas of their lives. Bishop and Mrs. T.D. Jakes from the Potter's House, Dallas. And so I am an extension of what has already been deposited in the earth, hoping to continue what God does through our family.
Awesome and incredible. So we're on a journey right now. I tell you, I'm not gonna lie. I snuck and read the book too.
Yeah, and actually, when I was reading the book, I said,
"That's all right."
This book is actually for me too. Like I know it's to women,
we
but
definitely need a part 2. We're gonna call that one, bruh. You need to evolve too, because I took a lot
love that, bruh. Evolve.
So how did we get here? You've written numerous books on various topics. This one, you took a hard look at the life of Eve. And you pulled so many principles out of her story that we could apply to our story.
We're no different than her.
Rewind the clock though. How did we end up here with this Woman Evolve topic?
I started sharing my story 7 years ago. Exactly. It was 7 years ago. And part of my story, outside of just being raised under the spotlight of being the daughter of, Bishop and Mrs. Jakes, is that I had this, traumatic experience at 13 years old. I got pregnant. I had my son at 14, and I spent 10 years really going through this toxic relationship with self, with God, with faith, with others. And when I started coming out of that toxic relationship with the world around me and wanting to really clean up my heart, my mind, and my soul, of course, I turned to God, I turned to Jesus. And as I was sharing what I was learning in the process, I just started blogging. From that blog, like things kind of, I guess, took off. Like the blog turned into a book, the book turned into speaking, and I was being invited all of these places to share my story. And yet I really didn't know what I was supposed to build my life on. Like what am I going to do with my life that I feel like I could build something worthy of people really walking with me for the rest of my life. It's one thing to hear someone's story. It's another thing to say, I want to do life with this person because we're going through the same thing. And I just didn't have that. until I started studying Eve in the Bible. And when I started studying Eve in the Bible, I recognized something about womanhood that I felt like every woman should know. That those moments when we know better but don't do better don't have to define us for the rest of our life. But we can't just ignore them either. We have to be willing to take a hard look at those moments to understand how they changed us, shaped us, transformed us. And are we satisfied with who we are as a result of what we've gone through? And if we aren't satisfied, how do we invite God to help us really evolve into what he had in mind when he formed us? When I saw Eve's life, I saw my life, and then I saw the lives of so many people, to your point, not just women, but men as well. And I felt like if I could write a book that dissected Eve's life, that dissected my life, then maybe I could give someone else tools to dissect their lives so that we could do the incredible surgery of changing what happened to us and turn it into what God can do through us.
Man, it's so good. I was reading in your book where you really had an aha moment. You were at a conference that you had to speak at, and you saw all these women with shirts on, and they had Ruth. They were different names of the Bible, women of the Bible, but nobody was wearing Eve. And you talked about how you knew that you had to get her message out because we all relate to Eve. And when you said that, I was like, you know what, she's right. Eve is someone in the Bible that we don't take to heart per se. We see what she did, but we don't necessarily include ourselves in her life. So talk about that moment and then how you walked it out to actually write this book. But how do we relate to Eve as well?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, to your point, there are very few women named in the Bible in general. So when a woman has a name in the Bible, that's someone they want us to remember. So we've got Sarah, Mary, Ruth, Esther. Those are the women who were on those shirts, and it said hashtag squad goals. And really this petty part of my brain was like, I know why they don't have Eve on that shirt. It's just ruined it for us all. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I'm tagged in tweets with people being like, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna drag Eve. And I was one of them. And I tell you this, you don't even have to be religious. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to even have a connection with faith for your life to have been affected by Eve's life. Everything that we see politically about women, in corporate settings about women, draw back to this moment in the garden when Eve cannot be trusted because she is responsible for the fall of humanity. Sis had one job and she wasn't able to do that one job. And because of it, the idea of womanhood was shifted and shaped around what happened in the garden. And yet when I saw that moment in the garden, I saw her as a woman on a journey, trying to do the best that she could with the tools that she had been given. And she had a forbidden fruit. And I thought about all the other times when I've had forbidden fruit, and women who I know who've had forbidden fruit. They spend when they're not supposed to spend. They're talking to someone they shouldn't talk to. They're not taking care of their bodies. We know better, but we don't often do better. That is the part of what it means to be human. And yet it doesn't have to stop there. And so every woman, every person is connected to what happened in the garden. And if we don't go back and clean up our own garden moments, clean up our own forbidden fruit moments, then we don't get to experience the redemption and restoration that is guaranteed to come as a result of what took place then.
Man,
that was it.
All right, we getting going already. My gosh. Okay, so you talked about the fact that part of the evolution process is not just knowing what happened, but acknowledge, like facing it. That's step one before you can evolve to the next thing. Looking in the mirror is not easy in any situation. You just named a bunch of things that people don't always get right. Their garden moments could be around money, could be around bad relationships, health and fitness,
food,
right?
That, yeah.
So when we don't get it right, and when we have to face the fact that we didn't get it right, it can be easier to put our head in the sand and just kind of, sweep it under the rug to try to move on, but we can't move on in a whole and healthy way. You're encouraging us to take a really hard look at the moment to pull out what we can learn from it. If it's difficult for someone to hear that and say, yeah, I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't think I want to look back at that moment because it was too painful. What would your advice be to them?
I totally get it. I feel like that's why I spent so long running from this, teen pregnancy, because I didn't want to embrace the fact that I was insecure. I didn't want to embrace the fact that there was so much shame connected to that moment. And yet me not addressing it didn't mean that it still wasn't affecting my life. I think that we feel like if I separate from that part of my life, then it no longer exists in my present life. But it's not true, because it's dictating how we engage in relationships. It's dictating how we engage with self. It's putting a lens on how we can even see God. When you start thinking stuff like, I do believe God's a redeemer, but I don't think he can redeem that. I do believe that God can restore, but I don't think he can restore that. We are putting limits on how God can and wants to show up in our lives. His strength is made perfect in our weakness. And so as difficult as it is to lean in, I would tell that person, first breathe. None of us were created to do this perfectly. Now, one person on earth has done this perfectly. No one has made it back to heaven without any scars, without any wounds. You are not in this pain alone. But just because we've been damaged, just because we've been ruined in some parts of our lives, doesn't mean that we can't be healed. So I would ask that person and challenge that person to really take a look at not just what happened to them, but how long they want to be limited by what happened to them. Because we don't have an exceedingly abundant life until we take a moment to look at what's limiting and restricting us. And to think that we've experienced trauma and don't have limitations is crazy. It's why the pandemic has been so taxing on all of us, because we've had these limitations, we've had these restrictions, and it's traumatic, and it still shows up in our being and our presence. So we've got to be transformed by the renewing of our minds.
Amen. So true. So I read this sentence and I asked you if you heard me scream Jesus, and how you didn't hear me. But our kids are remote learning right now. And so they were on their computers and I literally was like, Jesus. I'm like, oh, wait, they're in school. Hold on. I read this sentence and I was like, this summed it all up for me. You said, Eve eating from the fruit did not change God's intention. It only changed how he would fulfill that intention. That spoke to me.
Say Jesus.
Jesus.
All right.
Man, Eve eating from the fruit did not change God's intention. It only changed how he would fulfill that intention. So many times I can think of that we allow shame to think that God doesn't love us and that he's going to change his plans that he has towards us, right? And so when I read this, I was like, he just changed how he would fulfill it. Talk about that. Talk, like, press in on
Somebody needs that.
Okay, so in Genesis 1, we understand God's intention for humanity, right? He blesses Adam and Eve. He says, be fruitful and multiply. He tells them to have dominion. Come on, His and Her Money podcast.
Yes.
We have dominion, okay, to subdue. He gives them all of these tools and strategies for who you are supposed to be in the earth. I feel that for somebody. I got chills just thinking about that. That is who we are supposed to be in the earth. God has blessed us. He says, be fruitful and multiply. He says to have dominion. This is my vision for you. This is what I have installed you to be able to do in the earth. The moment she eats from this fruit, none of that changes. It's not like he says, okay, let me throw these plans away. I no longer want you to have dominion. I no longer want you to be blessed. I no longer want you to be fruitful and multiply. He says, okay, I still want you to get to that goal, but now you're going to need a bridge to do it. And so now my job is to make sure that you have a bridge to get it done. Jesus is that bridge that allows us to get it done. He makes up for the areas where we have deficit. And so when we come into the understanding and the knowledge that I am going to have a deficit, I'm thinking about that person who doesn't want to lean into the pain. I do have a deficit. I can't lie about that. I battle with inadequacy. I have low self-esteem. I'm afraid. These are my deficits. But there is a bridge that takes my deficit into not just adequacy, but into abundance. To go from deficit to abundance is possible when we live in the knowledge that I have the power of God working down on the inside of me. And when I make room for him to show up, I walk into an abundant mentality and an abundant lifestyle, and it changes the generations connected to me. It's bigger than just us. That abundance teaches our families and our cultures and community to live with that abundance mindset as well.
You want to scream Jesus, don't you?
Jesus.
I was like trying to like keep it quiet because I know our editor is like, every time we say something, the screen comes to us, but I'm like, Jesus, did y'all hear that? That was so powerful, so powerful. And I think that we need to keep that as a reminder before us. My gosh.
So as I listen, I'm reminded of, well, a couple of things, because you talked about, I mean, it's almost like we are much better at giving grace to others than we are to ourselves. And you said that nobody makes it back to heaven without scars. And, I'm a hip hop guy, so I immediately thought about a lyric. Mace, he was Pastor Mace at the time, right? And he said, I walk with God and I got the scars to prove it. And it just goes to show that we all have gone through something. We all have gone through challenge. We all have had our garden moments, and probably a few of them, but we can't stay there. We can't, because that's the ultimate goal of the enemy. It's not like when we talk to people, whether it's one-on-one or through this platform, especially when marriages are in crisis, he's not after your marriage, the devil. He's after your destiny. He's after your legacy. And so he uses these things, these trying times, these garden moments to alter destinies. And so I think that's why this message of evolving is so imperative. It's something that we got to lock in on, because you broke down how Eve said, when God confronted them after the fruit was eaten, that Eve said that, it was the serpent, he deceived me. And you broke down the Hebrew, because she's a biblical scholar, by the way. All right. She's not just, she's not here to just make y'all feel good. She knows her Bible. She knows the word. She knows her Bible. Okay. And so she broke down in Hebrew the word deceive. And you said, this isn't something that happened overnight. This is something that was intentional, that was methodical. Like, Eve wasn't a sucker. Yeah. She was deceived.
Yeah.
And so are we at times. And it's important that we don't stay deceived. And that's the part of Eve's story that we totally forget about. We stop after the fruit. We're like, dog, Eve, come on. Like you said, sis had one job, right? And we stop right there. But Eve didn't stop right there. There's more to her story. So past the garden experience, she took the time to keep evolving. How do we follow in Eve's footsteps in that manner?
Oh, goodness. I mean, God gave a word to the serpent. He really wasn't even talking to the woman. He was talking to the serpent, and he tells the serpent about seed and how the seed is ultimately going to be the battle in which God has the final say over what happens in the garden. The seed, we know that this is a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, but it comes down to seed. And so I think that we have to recognize that our hope for tomorrow, as coming out of our moments of forbidden fruit, our garden experiences, comes down to seed, that we have a seed of faith, a seed of promise. God's word is our seed. And that seed needs an environment. When we make the decision that I am going to evolve, okay, I surrender all, I'm going to sacrifice my now so that I can understand what God is calling me to do and who I'm supposed to be in the earth. That's a seed. And so to create an environment for that seed, we have to understand that environment is not just how we live, right? It's the words that we allow to enter our atmosphere. It's the music we allow to enter our atmosphere, the messages that are entering our atmospheres. Seeds need boundaries, right? You've never seen a garden that is just all spread out any kind of way. There's boundaries. There's a method to how we take care of that seed. And so I would tell that person to really look at your environment and determine what is in my environment that could threaten to kill the seed of my marriage, the seed of this new way that I want to operate in my finances. Maybe I need to shut the debit card off for a minute and just use cash in envelopes. Maybe I need to log off of Facebook because I'm too tempted by the images that I see, because I'm trying to cultivate a healthy seed. And there are things in our environment, to your point, that are meant to distract us, so that distraction keeps us from tending to the seed. And so the seed of our faith, the seed of our businesses, our families, our organizations, they all need environments. And so to really take inventory of the atmosphere and say, can this seed of who I'm supposed to be live in this environment that I'm currently in?
Legal & General America is a leader in low-cost, high-quality life insurance.
For nearly 70 years, Legal & General America has been providing financial protection to over 1.3 million families and businesses.
LGA makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy.
And agents are standing by to help you find the best coverage to fit your family's needs.
All you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/LGA to get a free quote now. I have another one that I want to read. Another like Jesus moment where I screamed. You said in your book, it's not just low self-esteem. It's not just a little anxiety or depression. It's not just bitterness. It's a threat to who you are called to be on this earth. When you do not become better, the world cannot become better either. It was that last sentence.
That's a lot of weight.
When you do not become better, the world cannot become better either. Talk about that, like unravel that.
Okay. I mean, here's the truth. I think that we begin to treat our trauma casually, our fears casually. We get so used to walking in them and with them that they just become a part of our life. Like, okay, it's a little depression, or okay, I've been bitter for a little bit. And then what's also threatening is that we see so many people around us who have treated it casually as well. And as long as our limitations are treated with casualness, then we never have the power to say, no, this is not okay. This doesn't work well for who I'm supposed to be in God. This is limiting the power of God to work through me. So yes, we all have access to the power of God, but not all of us have an environment that allows the power of God to flow through us. And so when we start seeing, our bitterness, our anger, the manipulation, the deceit, whatever it is that's in our world as just something that is casual, then the power of God is neutralized and it can't fully function in our lives the way that it's supposed to. And so with that part of the book, I really wanted people to get serious about what's going on with you, serious about what's keeping you bound and keeping you limited. And I wanted them to get a little gangster with it. Like, this is not just something that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. I'm not going to pass this down for another generation. I'm not going to pretend that it's okay when it's not. This is war against my family. This is war against my legacy. And so whatever I need to do, whoever I need to become, whatever doctor I need to call, whatever tools I need to set in place, I'm going to do that because I'm trying to build something. This is the kind of book for someone who feels committed to building something different than what has been. If we're going to establish the kingdom of heaven, then we're going to have to go into dark places. We're going to have to go into places where there is nothing established. And it's going to take builders. And it starts with building who we are on the inside so that we know what to do with the tools outside of us.
Man, you should be a preacher or something.
That's so good.
I mean, you're pretty good at this.
That's so good. Because I think a lot of people have it backwards. They're building businesses, they're investing in their marriages, they're doing things, but they're not working on themselves first prior, or even just working on themselves. Like every single month, we're always looking at ourselves like, exactly, how can we invest in ourselves? What do we need to do? I don't care if it's therapy, counseling. I don't care if it's a book. I don't care if it's a vacation. We were just talking about a vacation prior to coming live. But it's like, whatever it is, you need to be able to become better so the world can become better and your families can become better, your businesses, your church, all of it.
Yeah. Speaking of, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Becoming better. You wear a lot of hats. You talk about some at the top, you're a wife, you're a mom, you're a pastor of a multi-site church. I mean, multi-site as in not even in the same state. Right. You have your own platform, you're writing books, you got your podcast. I mean, you just got a lot going on. And for women in their evolution process, sometimes they lose themselves because they put all their energy into the wife hat or the mom hat or the corporate hat. And they don't know how to be themselves in all these areas. One thing about your platform is you're very authentic. Like you don't, all your stuff isn't flowers and roses. Like you talk about the wins, you talk about the losses, you talk about the lessons you've learned. For some people that are stuck in one of those places and they're worried about their ability to be themselves. They feel like they've lost a piece of themselves. Talk about how you juggle all these things and allow yourself to still be authentically Sarah, the good, the bad, the stuff that's still in process. And how can we apply some of that to our daily lives and our evolution?
This is such a good question. In the book, I talk about self-care versus soul care. And I feel like soul care is one of the first steps in really recognizing who we are. What does my soul need? When we start asking ourselves that question, like, what does my soul need? Of course, prayer and meditation, like we've got those things covered on the spiritual side, but like, what makes me laugh? when do I feel the most free? When am I having the most fun? Like sometimes you have to ask yourself a getting to know you question. And when you are getting to know yourself again, it helps you to understand how you can show up in these different spaces where like you're also advocating for what you need in any given moment. And I think that one of the things that happens with so many of us is that we're serving so many of the things outside of us. I kind of describe it in the book like this. We're like creating this photograph, like just take me for a moment back to like the JCPenney's photo studio where they're like fixing the bow tie and they're putting the teddy bear on the ground and like you're fixing this picture of your life. The only thing is you forget that you are a part of the picture too. We don't make space for ourselves to be in the picture too. And so what would it look like if you took up space in your world, in your life? What if would it look like if you went back to school, if you started doing art? Like what are the things that bring you joy? So I would tell that person, one, really get to know yourself and allow that version of you to be introduced to the world around you. If it's not funny, don't laugh. If you don't feel like going, don't go. Like make room for you in your world. And there is a sense of confidence and comfort that comes from us knowing that I don't have to feel pressure to fit into what they need me to be when I go into this room, because I can bring all of myself into it.
That's good. Talk about people who maybe they were evolving, maybe they were putting in the work, but maybe they got halfway through their process and realized that I am becoming someone that I'm not really called to be. Maybe they were evolving for their spouse, right? Or for their parents, living through their parents or whatnot. Talk about having to take a U-turn to make sure that you're evolving correctly the right way.
Oh goodness. I had a moment, I will say from like, I'm going to say like 2014 to 2017, like the latter end of 2014, where one thing I knew for sure is like I was being invited to speak all of these different places, but I never really felt like a preacher. So I didn't really know what I was doing in these rooms and in these spaces. And then people were inviting me to do things and they were good opportunities, but I didn't really understand them. I like clothes and fashion. And so that was very much so a part of my world and identity. And I just started feeling lost in it. Like, do the clothes even matter? Why am I speaking and sharing this story? Like, am I becoming someone that I can't live in for the long haul? And I really felt like in that moment that even the gift of the detour was that it kept me from becoming someone I wasn't. I think we have to, one, recognize that we don't lose time when we have to make a U-turn, that even the journey of figuring out who we aren't is just as important as figuring out who we are. And so you haven't lost momentum, you haven't lost time, you're not behind in making the detour. But once again, I think what happened to me in that moment is that I came to a place where I could only do what felt true to who I was. I had to only do things, this is a better way to explain it. I had to only do things that I wasn't doing for other people, that I wasn't doing for validation or approval or because it was what other people wanted from me. And that way, when I did something, I could stand flat-footed in it and say, this is what I know for sure God wants me to do, without it being diluted by the opinions and infections of others. And so U-turns are never bad. When you make a U-turn, it means that if I keep going in this direction, I'm going to end up somewhere I'm not supposed to be. The moment you make a U-turn on Waze, they stop screaming at you. Have you ever been on Waze and you're going the wrong direction and they're like, hey yo, this ain't it. Then you make a U-turn and you're finally like, okay, whew, now I'm back on track. Find relief in the U-turn. It's okay. We're all trying to figure it out, but don't stay the course that you know is leading to the detriment of your identity. When you can make a U-turn, and it may mean disappointing people and starting over, but at least you'll hold on to yourself.
That's a word all day. Now, we just got a question. How do you evolve within the blended family framework? And what advice would you give a couple early in their marriage?
Oh, goodness.
So
Okay.
evolving within the blended family framework. That's a great question.
Yeah. And PT and I, obviously, we evolved in parenting. We're a blended family. PT had 3 children. I had 2, and we have 1 together. So there's 6 children in our home. And man, you have to really have trust in your partner when evolving in the blended family dynamic, because at the end of the day, you all are creating the vision for your family. And the children don't always understand the vision when you're first starting off, because they are married to the old vision. And so you have to have so much trust with your partner that you're able to help move your children into a direction that is new for them, but is known to you because of the trust you have with your partner. And so I had to evolve as a single mother, and even like including my husband into my decision making. I came to LA, I was enrolling Kinsey in school. I had Malachi in an aftercare program, and he's like, "You didn't run any of this by me." I was like, "I didn't have to." I do this all of the time. But trust is like, let me be a part of the decision making, because I know things about this city that you don't know yet. So like, you have to trust and value your partner. And I think that's the same advice I think I'd give even to a married couple. Don't silence yourself. Don't silence your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Allow your partner access to every part of you, even if you aren't sure it is the right way to think. Because a lot of times we're like, I don't know if this is the right way to think, so I'm not going to say what I think. But when you do that, you withhold a part of yourself from your partner. Say it anyway. Just don't be married to it having to be that way, and allow for there to be a mixing of you all coming together. Every married couple, whether they have children or not, is a blended family, because you bring in your childhood stuff and my childhood stuff and the way that we do things into this marriage, and we have to figure it out. So I think the same rules apply.
Yeah, great response.
100%. So as we conclude, there's a lot of married couples listening. As a wife that is about to embark on this attempt to, evolve, what would be your advice to kind of break the news to others, like, yo, it's about to be some changes.
Evolving to a whole new woman. Okay?
About to be some changes, but in a healthy way. And what for the men listening, how do we support that process for our wives that we love so dearly?
That's such a great question. I think a lot of times, I don't know if every woman is like this, but I know I'm like this, where I have been guilty of telling my husband the finished product of my thinking and not like the inception of it. So if there's a woman who's on a journey and about to evolve, I think it's really important to bring your husband in on the journey, to say things like, I feel like I've lost myself. Over the last few years, I've been feeling isolated. I've been feeling unfulfilled. I have moments where I even feel depressed. To let your husband in to that vulnerable part of your heart. And then to say, I want to do better. There were things that used to bring me joy that I haven't accessed, or I don't know what brings me joy. Because at the end of the day, when you've got a real God marriage, like, you guys are for each other. And it's so much easier to say that I have felt lost than it is to say, you better hold on to your edges because your girl about to get found. Okay. I am not going to be the one anymore. You better make your own food. You better worry about them bills yourself because I'm doing me. Like, that's the finished product. But let's start at the very beginning. That's what I would say. And to a husband, I would say, and I think that this is for both spouses, because I believe that men are in an interesting space right now, especially as we see the rise of so many women empowerment movements and not as many empowerment movements geared towards men. I think one of the things that we could all benefit from in the context of marriage is to see each other, not so much as our spouses, but look at a baby picture of them, a childhood picture of them, and see them still as this soul, this innocent, questioning, inquisitive soul trying to figure out where they fit in the world. And when your spouse opens up to you, whether it's, I feel like I should start a business, or I want to leave my job, or I want to go back to school, to not hear this person who you've done so much life with that you are just used to what they say, but a childlike innocence in them trying to figure out where they fit in the world, and speak to them not like you would speak to a child, but with that child in mind, how delicate and gentle you would be with this intimate part of their soul. And even if you don't fully understand it or agree with it, take time to get on their level so that you can understand the communication coming from them.
That's real good. Well, tell everybody where they can grab your book and how they can stay in contact with you online.
Okay, Woman Evolve is available wherever books are sold: Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, all the jam. And I am Sarah Jakes Roberts on Facebook and Instagram, and S. Jakes Roberts on Twitter.
Man,
this is great.
This was fantastic. We hope that y'all were paying attention.
Yes.
Took some good notes, because, hey, we all need this journey. I mean, right. Pastor Sarah told us the world will be messed up if you don't get this right. She put all the pressure on our back and said, we got to get ourselves together or the world won't be right. So we hope that you guys really, really took a lot of value out of this. Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts laid tons of jewels, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share this wisdom with our audience today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor.